Hey everybody, it's Josh. I'm out here by the lake, Falls Lake, and near Raleigh, North Carolina, and walking along a thing of cedars. These cedar trees here. And while it's not exactly the same, these are thought to be the same kind of trees, cedar or cypress around here too somewhere, that Noah built his ark out of. They called it gopher wood, but it almost had to be cedar, they were saying. But who knows? But I want to talk today about, should Christians celebrate Halloween? Because we've probably heard over and over again that Halloween is some pagan holiday. You know, the Samhain. It's true that there was a celebration of the harvest that the Celtics celebrated called Samhain. And yes, they would dress up in different costumes to scare away the nefarious souls, because they thought that would mess with their harvest. So they wanted to keep those spirits away, right? Well, it wasn't too long after that the Celtics were taken over by Rome. And it wasn't too long after that the Romans became Christians. Because Christianity, the savior of the entire world, it began to just spread like wildfire. A healthy burn of the old corrupted ways. But when there's a healthy burn in a forest, you have a forest fire. Some forests need fires. Like in California, the redwoods and the large trees over there, they need the fires. They need it. It nourishes them. So we burned away a lot of the old pagan traditions. And the Pope, and I think it was around 400 BC, could be wrong because I'm just going by memory on this. They decided to integrate a similar practice called All Saints Day, All Martyrs Day, All Souls Day. It was called different things. And it was to celebrate in a Christian way. Now, I understand that, well, that just seems like it's just Christianity trying to take over that. But no, every single society celebrated the harvest. Christians especially, just like everyone, is thankful for the harvest. When it's a good harvest, we give thanks. If it's a bad harvest, we sit and worry about how to make it through the winter. Not anymore, because we're fat and happy and don't even think about the harvest at all. In fact, most of us go to the grocery store and can't even tell you where the food comes from. I remember a story. One guy asked where it was a deer hunter, and he was bringing his deer after he cleaned the deer back and putting it in his truck. And this man and this boy, his son, came and just started screaming at him. And they were like, "You murderer, you absolute awful man." And the man's like, "What are you guys, vegetarians? Or, I mean, what's going on?" Like, no, we're not vegetarians. But I mean, it was a crazy interaction. And the guy was like, where do you think that your food comes from? Where do you think your steak or your chicken comes from? And they're like, it comes from the grocery store, you moron. That's the kind of society we're living in. That is the kind of society we're living in. But back to Halloween. So the Pope made it a Christian holiday. All Saints Day, and then Halloween is All Saints Eve. All Hallows Eve. So the name Halloween is a Christian name. And it's true that because of the Celtics, that we dress up like angels and devils and all kinds of stuff. Or we started to, at least. Now we dress up like Taylor Swift and, who knows what. Travis Kelce, I guess. Because that's where our society's at. That's that right there. It's the second time I brought Taylor Swift up in my videos, and that is, I apologize for that. I truly apologize for that. But I'm trying to rid that evil from my household, and it's a process for sure. Okay, so the Pope made it a Christian holiday, right? So All Hallows Eve. We're worshiping the saints, giving thanks to God, to Jesus Christ, for the harvest that we get. And we have that pagan tradition of dressing up and going trick-or-treating. Now, it's pagan. It's obviously wrong, right? I want to refer you to 2 different stories in the Bible to show you how there's nothing to worry about when it comes to celebrating Halloween, even if it has pagan influence in it. So the first is when Jesus Christ, I believe it's in the book of Matthew, Gospel of Matthew. Jesus Christ takes the disciples to a place called the Gates of Hell. And this was an evil place that Jews did not go. Only Romans went there, because it used to be a place that they just threw trash. It was this big natural spring waterfall, like a sulfuric, I think, water coming out of it. And then in the Roman times, that is when they would take a lot of the people they crucified, especially because the Romans crucified a lot of Jews. A lot. I mean, they were so evil, they were just stringing them up or nailing them up left and right. It's really sickening. But that's where they went and threw the bodies. And of course, the Jews called this the Gates of Hell. And the disciples were like, why did you bring us here, Rabbi? Why did you bring us here, Lord? And he's like, calm down. We no longer need to fear places like this. We no longer need to fear evil or death. You hearken back to King David. As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm going to be doing a video on that a little bit later here too. That's a different subject. So Jesus told them, you don't have to fear this anymore. I have conquered death. I will conquer death for you. There is nothing to fear in this world. There is nothing to fear except for yourself. The only thing to fear is fear itself. It's not a biblical quote, it's a presidential quote, but it is true. Because we make a prison in our own hell. We build the prison cell, piece by piece. We are the ones who open our souls up to evil, to corruption. But that was the first story I wanted to point to. The second story is a story, it's more of a broader story about the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul, he grew up in a pagan society and he wasn't a liberal Jew either. He was a very, very strict, almost zealot Jew. I say almost, he was a zealot. If you remember, before Christ came to him on the road to Damascus and opened his spiritual eyes, Paul was tracking, torturing, and killing Christians because he thought we had to rid the world of this idolatry. We just need to be rid of it. So, Paul, obviously, like I said, he was on the road to Damascus. He was blinded by the divine form of Christ. He went and Christ visited the brother Ananias, a devout Christian, a devout follower of Christ. And Ananias went to Paul and healed him of his blindness. He was blind and now he sees. And Paul got baptized, and Paul became the one who did amazing works, wrote 75% of the New Testament. He traveled to Gentile and pagan areas and preached the gospel, and did it with such amazing zeal. He performed miracles. I think I mentioned, it might have been in my live stream, but people were clamoring just to touch an article of clothing that Paul was wearing. And then when they touched him, they were going and healing people in the name of Christ. That's how powerful the Holy Spirit was in the Apostle Paul. And I want to tell you the story of the Apostle Paul. You guys probably already know most of it. But the Apostle Paul, when he was visiting the Gentiles and the pagans, he did not go there and say, no, this is not right. Everything you're doing is not right. What he said was, no, the gods you are worshiping are not right. The practices you use make very little difference. Because the practices we use to honor the true God are what we hold sacred. We as individuals hold sacred. So, for me, the greatest thing, the way I perform my worship and my prayer. Sorry, I was trying to think of, my mind took a blank there. The greatest way I worship God is out in nature. You all know this beautiful nature behind me, this beautiful lake, cedar trees. It's where I hear God's voice the clearest. And so for me, this is my time of worship. When I come out here, it is sacred to me. To many others, going to church, going to mass, going wherever is sacred to them. Do you think that God cares which one is more holier? You think he has some list of, well, this is the holiest way to worship me, this is the right way to worship me, and this is the wrong way to worship me? No. If it is sacred to you and doesn't include a false god or a false idol or some kind of worship of yourself, then that is a sacred way to worship and honor God. And Paul was not gonna tell people, no, get rid of all your traditions, get rid of all these different ways you worshiped your old God. He said, get rid of your old God and worship Jesus Christ. Worship God the Father, the unknown God. Just read about when Paul took a bunch of Stoics, because Stoicism was a huge philosophy back in the day. And the Stoics were a big influence on Paul. He was a Roman citizen. He grew up in a place called Tarsus. And that huge influence on him, I'm going to try to get the wind not blowing too hard in the video. I hope it's working. But he had the pagan, the Stoicism, the Greek and Roman pantheon of gods. He had all this as not direct influence on him, but they influenced his life. They influenced the world around him. And look, these temples built to all the, we'll say, the Greek gods. Those were what he said, you have to stop this. But then he took the Stoics, who were probably the biggest intellectuals at the time. He took them to the temple of the unknown God. And he said, this is what I'm showing you, because this is God the Father. This is the one true God. And it's called the unknown God. He's called the unknown God because we cannot know him, right? Well, now we can know him because he came to the earth as a man and made himself known. He made himself known for us all. And many of the Stoics didn't believe him, didn't want anything to do with the blasphemy of not worshiping the Greek pantheon of gods or whoever they were worshiping. But many started to think. Many had that seed of divinity planted within them. And that's how the ripples go out. That's how the divine fire spreads. We burn down the old, but we leave the things that are sacred that can be used for the glory of Christ. Christ did not want us to rid ourselves of every single influence. The worship of God, even if it is the false God, and we've never heard of the real God before, is a beautiful and sacred thing. It is a beautiful thing. And that is when we put something above ourselves, that higher power above ourselves. Those of you who've gone through AA know, or any kind of Narcotics Anonymous or whatever, you know that they tell you you have to believe in something higher than yourself. Paul was saying, yes, you do. You absolutely do. And the manner in which you worship something higher than yourself, and it can only be God, the real true God. The manner in which you worship Christ, who is the manifestation of God. It doesn't matter so much as long as you are following his teachings, as long as you are honoring him. There's a very, and I'll leave with this, there's a very controversial part of Paul's writings. And I'm sorry, I can't remember whether it was the Ephesians or the Corinthians, but he tells the women to wear the headscarves when they're worshiping. And everybody's like, what a sexist, what kind of garbage is this? But this was a societal and pagan tradition. You see, if women didn't cover up their faces and their heads then, they were considered to be basically prostitutes. It was a free-for-all with them. It's sad, but it's true. And it was also shown as a sign of respect when worshiping the pagan gods. And basically, you're showing that kind of respect for the pagan gods. You should show that kind of respect for the true Christian God, Christ, the one true God. Anything you do to show respect and to show honor, keep doing that. And it doesn't matter if we're celebrating the harvest. Samhain was just a harvest celebration. And yes, there were pagans celebrating it, but guess what? Everyone celebrated the harvest. The harvest is amazing. It's when we get our food, or when we did get our food. Now, like I said, we just have it everywhere. And all year long, I can go get a watermelon, and I'm thankful for that, by the way. I love watermelon. Although the ones in this time of year just aren't so great, but I'll take it. I'm not complaining. But listen to me. We are not worshiping pagan gods. We are not giving homage to pagan gods. They weren't even giving homage to pagan gods at the time. They were doing a pagan tradition, but it wasn't blasphemous. We changed that. It's been over 1,500 years since it hasn't been a pagan tradition. So it's up to you whether you think, no, we're not going to celebrate Halloween. But I'm telling you, you do things to honor just pointless things sometimes. We worship, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate, all these dumb little holidays now. We have a holiday almost every day, it seems like. It's a different, this is teacher day, this is parent day, this is pastor day, this is elephant day, this is rock day. It's ridiculous. It gets meaningless and watered down. Bring it back to Christ. Bring everything to Christ. And that's all that matters. Worship Jesus Christ on a daily basis. Think about Christ as much as you can in every situation you can. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. I'm telling you, it is all that matters. All right, so you guys make the decision. You let me know what you think. I know I'm going to be getting a lot of, it's wrong. It's okay. Let me hear it. I don't mind. I can take it. Believe I'm not offended by anything. I'm not offended by anything. Unless they're blaspheming my God in a just hideous way, like something like the Olympics. And still, I'm like, that's disgusting, but whatever. I will speak up about it the opening and closing ceremonies of the Olympics, how they blasphemed Christ over and over and over again, and they lied and said they didn't. But we're not blaspheming anything. We're letting the kids go out and get some candy from strangers. That's all safe, right? We're letting them have fun. And have fun not in a, yeah, I get it. It's a materialistic world, and that's why kids have fun. But maybe talk about Christ before you go take them trick-or-treating. Maybe talk about some of the saints or the martyrs. Talk about Stephen from the Bible, the first martyr of Christianity, who the Apostle Paul had killed. Talk about him. Go read the chapter in Acts, the verses in Acts about Stephen, Saint Stephen. All right, everybody. I love you all so much. God bless.